Welcome to our Right Management webinar today. Today we're going to be focusing on people-centered outplacement programs today. So we're delighted to be joined by companies all over the world today. A lot of clients from Ireland. We have companies from the UK, Australia, US, Philippines, global companies on today. So delighted to have you all on, and as well as some of our Right Management colleagues throughout Europe as well. So you're all very welcome. So delighted to be joined by two very special guest speakers today. So firstly, my colleague Nicola Rundle from our European team. Nicola does fantastic work with the business, both supporting here in Ireland as well as Europe with some of our key enterprise clients. So delighted to have Nicola here today to speak about some of her experiences, best practice. So welcome, Nicola. And also delighted to be joined by a very special friend of ours in Right Management Ireland here, Lauren Messing. Lauren is a long-time supporter of us here in Ireland. We've worked with Lauren in our past roles with Akita, and currently working with Lauren on the executive program herself. So delighted to have Lauren on the call here today just to discuss some of her own experiences and some of the industry experiences from her experience that I think you'll find very interesting as well. So just to get started, just in terms of a little bit of an oversight of what we're talking about today over the next 45 minutes or so. So I'm just going to start off a little bit of run through about Right Management, for anyone who doesn't know about us or new to us, just to give you a flavor for what we do, and a little bit about the basics of outplacement. Lauren and Nicola will be getting into the details on it, but happy to give you a quick overview just before we hand over. Nicola will be talking about some of the outplacement trends and best practices from her experience in her European Right Management role. Lauren will be talking about her Takeda experiences and her Canada experience as well from her own programs. And we'll have time for some Q&A as well. So in the invitations you would have seen, there was a Q&A box. So happy to have your questions, and we'll be answering some of those towards the end of the webinar as we wrap up as well. So a few things on the housekeeping side. Any questions, you can type them into the Q&A function, not the chat. The reason for that is when it's in the Q&A, we'll be able to come back to you after the webinar, just in case we don't have time to answer here today. So we're happy to do that. Attendees' profiles are not publicly displayed. We know you're here, so GDPR reasons, you're not all displayed. But we've close to 100 people on today's call, so glad to have you all here. The webinar is recorded and available on demand. We can send out some of the presentations in PDF form for anyone who wants it as well. And as we go through it, maybe think about what the topics we're talking about here today mean for your business. Some people have run outplacement programs before with their companies. Some of this might be new to others. So whether it's something you're currently experiencing or something potentially you want to know more about for the future, try and relate it back to your business as we go. So I'm just going to kick off with a few slides on our Right Management side and outplacement in general, just to give people a flavor for both. So for anybody that doesn't know about Right Management, we've been working for over 40 years. We're a global business with a presence in a large number of countries throughout the world. We are a people-centric focused business. We support candidates all around the world in terms of outplacement programs, and we partner with lots of different companies, both from a regional and global perspective, to support their staff in this career transition journey. So that is what we're known for, and I'll touch on some of the areas that we work in and support companies on this slide. So from the right-hand side, today we're focusing on the outplacement side, which is the career transition and the programs that we do. We also work in a number of other areas as well. We work in mobility and change solutions. We support companies with career development solutions and programs. We work with management from various business and leadership solutions and leadership training. We also offer coaching services, through the business. In Ireland, we have a specific focus on executive coaching here as part of our offering, but we also do leadership coaching throughout the wider Right Management business as well. And we also support clients with assessment-based solutions. So we'd be very well known for a number of these areas. We do a lot of outplacement work here in Ireland, so you might know us best from that space, but we support in all of those 6 key ranges for clients that we work with on an ongoing basis. In terms of career transition, in terms of some of the key points, in terms of what a journey looks like, essentially we support all levels employees through their career journey, whether that's transitioning from the business into other roles. We connect candidates with appropriate resources for their respective career levels. Typically, individual outplacement is personalized to reflect, whether it be the standing of the person in the company, tenure, their seniority, whatever the case may be. And we have specialized programs for certain types of group programs as well, which we'll touch on. Coaching candidates through a personalized experience with unique goals. Everyone is different. Everyone has their own unique experiences with programs. Increase their confidence in personal branding and job search skills, in terms of returning to the market, which is the goal for most of the candidates to go through this program, but not all. So placement is one of the areas we track, and connecting candidates through a network of hiring partners and recruiters. So Right Management is part of the wider Manpower Group business, and we do support candidates on the placement side through our sister brands, our Manpower and Express brands. So we do use our internal connections to assist our candidates wherever we can. In terms of the three main areas of outplacement support, this is typically what we do here at Right Management, but it's typical of the industry as well. Three main elements from that executive outplacement coaching element, which is something Lauren will touch on maybe in her slides. Individual outplacement, which provides individual coaching and support for a fixed period of time. Everything from 1 month to 6 months up to 9 months for some senior managers. And we also work with companies on that group outplacement support. So whether that be manufacturing companies with large number of similar staff, we do support those type of companies with group outplacement, which is group activity based. So they're the three main areas of outplacement support, and some of the things we touched on today reflect those three areas of our work. Just quickly, this slide is about what a typical outplacement journey will look from the candidate perspective, just in case anyone on the call hasn't experienced this or unfamiliar with what the candidate journey might look like. So it typically would start with us receiving, obviously, candidate details, a briefing about the candidate's role, tenure, contact details, all that side of things. Our delivery team would then obviously engage with the candidate, get them notified and enrolled into their program. We do focus on that quick connection with candidates. We know it's a sensitive time in their career journey, so we do connect with them as quickly as possible, usually same day or next day latest in most cases. From there, they're assigned a dedicated career coach that's the best fit for them based on what their role is. We have a large range of coaches that we work with, so we try and assign people the best one that we feel is the best match for them and their particular circumstances. And the goals of their journey is it touches on areas like self-awareness, CV development, upskilling to prepare people for their new role. Our coaches will work with candidates on interview skills, and negotiation for salaries, their online profile, their personal branding, all those elements of what their career journey involves to get people placed in new roles, and obviously supporting from that job search and learning and upskilling piece as well. And the main goal for these programs, in most cases, is to land people a new job or get a replacement job for people that have gone through this outplacement program. Our coaches are always flexible experience for people that are looking for self-employment. As the example, we work with them in that space as well. There may be we've worked with candidates that are looking towards more retirement, and we work with them in that space as well. So conscious of all the different areas or life cycles of our candidates, and we work with everyone on an individual basis, for their needs. Final slide for me, just what makes us a little bit different, and we feel, makes us, a key partner. The first two is the only ones I touch on. That personal touch and that expert advisor piece is really what helps us, I think, stand out, and it's what we try and put our focus on. That's the core we'll be talking about today from our people-centric approach. We really feel that's where candidates benefit significantly, from these outplacement programs. That personal approach, those personal touch points, and that longevity of support, is what we typically try and offer our candidates, and what we're known for, I guess, in our industry. So just a little bit about Right Management and what we do, and a little bit of a starting point for the outplacement for our speakers. So delighted to hand you over to Nicola now, and I'll be running through some of our best practices from our candidates. So over to you, Nicola.
Thanks very much. So hi, everybody. As Paul says, I'm Nicola Rundle, and I oversee career services across Europe. Very excited to be here today. I work essentially with organisations that are going through change and transformation to design and deliver through our teams and our resources, outplacement services that are both effectively aligned with their needs and the needs of their people, and also truly people-centred. And we'll talk a lot more about that throughout the session today. Just flicking to the next slide, thanks, Paul. Paul asked me to share 3 things essentially in my section. The first of those being what's happening in the market that's shaping the way that careers are evolving. So we're going to look at that. We're also going to look at what that then means for people who are navigating a career transition, and landing on some practical guidance on keeping outplacement people first, even in a tech-driven world. So let's dive in. Let's start with taking a look at what's happening in the market. Now, I've picked out 4 key shifts that are shaping the landscape. There are many, but 4 key ones that we're seeing. The first is that organisations are planning their workforce differently, more dynamically, less around static job titles, but around skills. And this means mapping skills that they have, the skills that they need, and working out how to close and respond to the gaps in between. So that shift is allowing for much more agile deployment of talent, whether that's through reskilling and upskilling, redeploying talent, or hiring new talent in, or even using short-term talent for projects or particular assignments. The second shift that we're seeing is AI. It's already making a difference in terms of how organisations are managing talent. It can speed up the analysis of skills data. It can improve the matching of people to opportunities, and we're certainly using that within our outplacement offering. And it takes repetitive admin off our hands. But there's a twist here, and it actually means that the human skills like creativity, like attention to detail, adaptability and empathy are even more important. We're also seeing much more fluid management of talent, particularly around internal mobility. So organisations that I'm speaking with are really focused on career frameworks, on internal career coaching. Talent marketplaces, for example, are evolving to support that quick movement of talent across teams and projects. And then finally, for individuals, the shift I wanted to highlight is the career ladder is looking a lot more like a climbing frame. And the image I had in mind is that kind of primary school, for those of you who remember a climbing frame, that dome-shaped climbing frame. Workers need to be more active, proactive navigators of their own career. That means curating skills, it means exploring lateral moves and thinking about the value that they bring, not just the role that they hold. And we're certainly focused very heavily on that in the outplacement support that we provide. So these shifts are exciting on a macro level, but for somebody suddenly facing job loss, they can feel quite overwhelming. So let's take a look on our next slide at what that actually feels like for individuals who are facing transition. So if you haven't searched for a job in several years, or even the last couple of years, you need to know that it's changed quite dramatically. And of course, technology has been a big driver of that. It's transformed the job search process. And job seekers are often feeling quite overwhelmed by that fact. And we hear this as well from our candidates. And you can see some of the topics that are raised on the screen here. So we hear many candidates asking things like, how do I get past the AI screening systems? What does that even mean? Things like, if everyone's using AI to write their CVs and their cover letters, how do I stand out? Additionally, things like, how do I prepare for one-way interviews that people might have heard of? How prolific actually are they? What do they look like? And which opportunities are even real when there's lots of ghost opportunities, or include, scams are out there as well. So we need to help people to be alert to those types of things. Add to that the competition for hybrid or remote roles and the pressure to keep your skills relevant. It's kind of no wonder that people today are feeling quite overwhelmed. And you think about navigating all of that without expert guidance and coaching, that job search process can become quite confusing and possibly ineffective. It can potentially take you longer. So when people have the support from professionals, it can really help them to cut through that noise and to move forward with far greater clarity and confidence. And that's really what they need to keep focused on moving forward. Now, one of the things that we never lose sight of, I'm showing it on the next slide, is the fact that job loss it's highly emotive. It hits people at that identity level. And in fact, it's continuously sort of ranked among the top 10 most stressful life experience that people go through. And the research that I'm sharing here, it dates back to 2022, but still relevant today, that employees are actually much more highly likely to develop new health conditions in the 18 months following redundancy. It can take an average of 2 years to recover psychologically. And also people often face salary reductions of up to 20% compared to their peers who were not made redundant. So there's some quite, key impacts to people's lives and livelihoods and professional careers that we must not forget. And when organisations are having to make those really tough decisions, they want to know, you want to know that your people are going to be okay, they're going to be cared for, and that they're going to achieve their goals. And we also remember that those who remain in the organisation are also watching very closely to see how you handle exits. And of course, that then has a knock-on effect for morale and engagement and trust in the workplace. So I would say the bottom line is that job loss and job search are not do-it-yourself projects. People need structured guidance, personalised coaching to really think about their future, to focus on moving forward, and also to be able to be really timely about that so that it doesn't just drag on. Now, our role in outplacement when somebody experiences job loss is recognising that quite naturally many people will start their progress in a place of uncertainty and often feeling quite vulnerable. People sense that real loss of identity, they worry about their market fit, paying bills, anxiety about potential skill gaps. But when the right support is at hand, they can really turn that into an opportunity. And outplacement is there to help them do that. So outplacement gives people that parenthesis of time in which to really focus and think about things like reskilling, pivoting to new industries, or even maybe accessing remote roles that perhaps weren't in their thought process before, but now a possibility. So the goal of outplacement, I would say, is to help people to bridge that gap. So moving from that place of uncertainty to opportunity and doing it with a kind of a fresh sense of resilience and confidence. Now, in our organisation, we talk about human first and tech always. And on my next slide, I've got an illustration of that. So human first, tech always, in other words, it goes without saying that technology is a powerful enabler. So it helps us to scale support, it helps us to match skills to jobs, it provides that learning on demand, but it should never really replace the empathy, the motivation, the reassurance that people need during such a major life change. And in my experience, the most effective programs are those that are tech enabled, but not tech overwhelming. There is lots of technology out there. So for us, it's not about having all the technology, it's about having the right technology that's going to come together in a way that makes sense for those individual journeys. And it's very much about personalization because, and this is a mantra that we've been saying for many years, one size doesn't fit all. Every journey is unique. We need to recognize that. And that balance of offering both emotional support to build confidence and the practical tools to secure the next role or the next opportunity that that individual is looking for is really key. So companies that are able to really strike that balance don't just support their people better, they also protect their employer brand and they're able to accelerate those transitions more effectively. So I've got a couple of case studies just to bring some of those points to life. And the first one was our experience with a global technology client who had to conduct quite a major restructuring across 60 countries, and it impacted more than 5,000 people. So they really needed a partner who could move quickly, but also deliver locally in local language and with real cultural sensitivity. So in a situation like this, being people-centered for us really starts with that partnership. So we mirrored the client setup, one global lead, 3 regional leads, so that we could work hand in hand with their HR and their business leaders. And within just a few weeks, we ensured that our local experts were fully briefed, that their HR had clear guidelines in local languages, and that stakeholders knew exactly how to explain and how to talk about the outplacement support. And that preparation meant that when those referrals for outplacement started coming into us, employees already had the confidence that the support was real, that it's accessible, and that it was human. There was going to be a person there who was going to walk that journey with them. And for me, this is people-centered outplacement at scale, making sure that not only employees are cared for, but also that HR and managers have the right tools to communicate, with that empathy and that consistency across their locations. At the other end of the spectrum, another case study, closer to home for many of you on the call in Ireland, is the support that we provided to a pharmaceutical company in Ireland where 28 people were impacted. So completely different scale. Here, the emphasis was on personalised coaching, the practical career tools, but also on protecting the employer brand in a tight local talent market. And we saw 85% of those individuals actively engage in their support, and every participant rated their coaching really highly. And that's people-centered outplacement at a very local level, where we're treating every individual with that respect that I've talked about, those individual journeys, whilst also helping the organisation to maintain that trust in the local community. So these are 2 examples, one global, one local, that I wanted to share that show that being people-centered isn't about the size of the project. It's about the approach. And whether you're supporting thousands of people across multiple countries or just a few dozen in one location, the principles are the same. We want to drive that consistency of message, empathy in our delivery, and care of your people. And shortly you're going to hear from our guest, from Lauren, who's experienced outplacement support firsthand, both as a client and also as a candidate. And that's a really nice way to kind of further illustrate those points that I've been making. So just a roundup from me. Careers, I was going to say careers of the future, but we're seeing it now, are less about climbing a ladder. They're more about navigating a landscape. So outplacement isn't just about placing somebody in their next role. We recognise that people have different aspirations, and we support multiple career paths, new roles, self-employment, retirement, change of industry, back into education. It's about helping people to read the map, to choose the right direction for them, to feel confident and empowered about the value that they bring, and to move forward with purpose. And purpose is something that has really risen up as a priority for people in the last few years. And when we combine the best of human empathy with that smart technology, we can create transitions that are not just successful, of course we want to drive that, but that they're meaningful and they're sustainable. So it's about helping people to move forward with confidence, to build resilience, and to do it, in a timely way, recognizing that those results don't happen in isolation, but partnering with organizations to ensure that those transitions are managed with care and with consistency, and that they drive the desired impact. So by supporting people, we're also strengthening the organization through those partnerships. So I'm going to pause there. Thank you for listening. I'll hand back to Paul and let you introduce Lauren.
Thanks, Nicola. Some really interesting stuff there. It's always striking, when we see this slide about the impact of outplacement on the individual. I've seen that slide before. It's really interesting to know that, and we spoke with clients from that side as well, exactly with that emotional and the physical impact it has. And from the case study as well, really interesting to see the scale of some of the work we do on some of those local examples. I think it's really good for people to see those in practice as well. So thanks, Nicola. Delighted to introduce our colleague and friend Lauren as well. So Lauren's going to talk to you about some of her experiences, both personal and professional. So over to you, Lauren. And you are on mute there, just so you know, Lauren.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much to Paul and Nicola for having me here today on the session. And all I can say is yes, and I can say it with actual authority, because as Paul and Nicola have said, I've been a client and also a candidate. So I'm going to speak to you about my experiences from both of those different vantage points. So I'll start off with a little bit about myself. So I am originally from Michigan in the United States. I've actually put a little picture down there. It's the Great Lakes state, so we border on with Canada, but I have been living and working in Ireland since 1999. So I've been here a while now. I've held a variety of HR leadership positions across various blue chip companies and industries. You can see on the right-hand side. My most recent life sciences role was as the head of employee experience and employee relations with Takeda for Ireland and Canada. I am no longer with Takeda, and that's kind of how I came with my journey to be a candidate with Right Management. I have secured a new role, but I'll be speaking about the Takeda experience. I'm a qualified workplace investigator, mediator, and career coach. And as I said, most recently, I am a candidate of Right Management. So thank you. Right. So what I'll talk about first really is my experience as a client, as Takeda Ireland went through a number of iterative projects resulting in the need for outplacement. And then I will share a little bit about my own journey. And then I'm going to wrap up with just some key learnings and takeaways from myself, really being in that HR leadership space around restructuring. And, if that can be of any use to anybody on this call, maybe it will. I know there's a lot of activity in the marketplace. I know you're all sitting across the globe, so I probably should have started with good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. But hopefully, if any of these takeaways are helpful, that's why I put them in at the very end. But if we start with Takeda Ireland and Right Management, so Takeda started to work with Right Management really in 2019. And in my tenure, there were 3 sort of separate, discrete outplacement engagements with Right Management. And I'll just take you through how they came about. For those of you who might be on the call in the world of pharma, you may recall that Takeda acquired Shire Pharmaceuticals here in Ireland, globally, but Shire Pharmaceuticals is here in Ireland in 2019. And if you've been through mergers and acquisitions, there's a lot of harmonization that needs to take place. There's a lot of synergetic activity, I would call, that has to take place, whether it's systems or it's people or it's roles. And typically that does result in some type of a restructure. And that's what happened in 2019 and 2021. Following Takeda's acquisition of Shire, there was significant reorganization resulting in roles in 2019 really moving to Łódź, Poland, and just a general downsizing. And so there was sort of part 1 in 2019, and then we had part 2 in 2021. It affected mainly the Bagot Street site and legacy Shire roles, and roles that mainly were in finance, treasury, including some transactional roles such as accounts payable and some back office type of activity, but really it was office-based. That's really what happened in 2019 and in 2021. In 2024, some of you may recall last year, there was actually the failure to gain approval in the North American market for a specific product. And that actually resulted in a full plant closure in the Grange Castle facility. So that was a pilot plant manufacturing a medicine that was due to go into production. And unfortunately, it did not gain approval for licensing in Canada and the United States. Thus, the plant needed to close. And that resulted in 80 roles being made redundant, including manufacturing and quality roles, as well as mid to senior level scientific roles and some management as well. So that was the manufacturing site. So it's a bit of a compare and contrast here. So we had the office-based situations in 2019 and 2021, and then 2024 was the manufacturing plant. And it's really, I think, key to note for anybody who's maybe on this call where this is your first rodeo, where you're having to maybe look at some of the stuff. 2019 was the first major large-scale restructuring activity for Takeda. So, when I speak a little bit more about the support Right Management gave us, I think there were good synergies and it was a strong partnership, and Right Management understood this was new territory for Takeda and what goes along with that. By the time we got to 2021 and 2024, obviously we had processes in place, but it was good to work with a partner at the out who understood this is the first time that we were doing it. Thank you. So this slide, I guess we're calling it the case study 3. It's kind of the same information, but just sort of put into a table format just for ease of, I guess, looking at it. So as I said, 2019 and 2021 were really post-acquisition restructures. Again, who was impacted? And then in 2024, we had a plant closure. And you'll recall from Paul's slides when he was talking about the different programs, what we really utilized were the 3- and 6-month individual programs in all of those situations. And all of our right management programs were a combination of group workshops and webinars, one-to-one meetings, and portal and technology enablement. And it's also important to note, in 2021, we were in the throes of COVID. So any of our consultation, any of our meetings that we had to have were fully remote. And I do think there is a high degree of skill required, which right management achieved in terms of managing sensitively via our Teams or Zoom or whatever. It was new for everybody. So there was a lot happening with the employees. And I can't really stress enough, when Paul and Nicola talk about the ethos being people-centric, I've lived it, right? I've lived it on both sides. And, certainly when we were in the middle of COVID and nobody could sit in a room with each other during these sensitive times, right management really rose to the occasion. So a big thank you to right management. Okay, so outplacement considerations, I suppose, for Takeda. So I've kind of given you the result, but what really kind of went into thinking about how do we pick a provider? What are we looking for? Well, I think first and foremost, and I'm sure many of you on this call feel the same, it's really about the employee experience. I know many of you, I'm sure, are HR professionals on the call, and we focus so heavily on the employee experience, whether it's onboarding or recruitment or our compensation or our reward strategy. But the exit strategy is not always something we like to think about or have to talk about. And yet it is so critical because that's the lasting memory. How was I treated? And for us in Takeda at the time, it was very important, and I'm sure it's still very important, that, people felt they were exiting with dignity. I'm a valued person. I made a contribution, and now I want to go with dignity. Because for some people, it may be a welcome release. And for other people, it could really be Nicola's slides, I thought, that talked about the overwhelming realities of career transition. I'm looking at notes because I was writing it down as she was doing it. And the second slide after that, where it talked about the psychological impacts of job loss. They're not to be underestimated, right? And we want to know as employers that we are doing the very best we can do for all of these people who have created success for our organizations. So the people-centric ethos was key consideration for our impacted colleagues. I'll talk more really on my final slide about organizational restructuring, but there are multiple moving parts. For any of you who've been through it or you're about to go through it, it can seem really overwhelming. There are so many moving parts and so many stakeholders and levers you're trying to pull. And HR oftentimes is really at the center of it, trying to hold it together in a very fast-moving situation that's constantly changing and evolving. And there's many, many people and stakeholders you need to manage. So it was great to have right management there as a trusted collaborative partner to really know in this outplacement space, they've got it. In terms of the engagement process itself, so the nuts and bolts that Paul really talked about in terms of when we engage, what happens, again, right management, knowledgeable on, their business, very responsive. So again, you're moving in this very fast place and space, very responsive. We have a question. We have to do something differently. Can we pivot? We're in the middle of COVID. All these different considerations. Nothing was really a problem, which is what you really need. And also flexible. So, there may be, we wanted to flex up with some aspects of program and flex down with others. Both Paul and Nicola spoke extensively about, the different levels of employees and making sure it's a good fit. And I can speak to that myself when we talk about my own situation. But that flexibility and, at times even a bespoke feeling, along with being knowledgeable and responsive, again, trusted partner and collaboration. And the way we selected the programs, because we also touched on this earlier in the presentation, was really about market considerations and reemployability. So we took a look at 3-month programs for maybe individual contributors and some of our manufacturing personnel, because really research was telling us that 3 months, give or take, was probably going to be the job search before they were to land a similar or better position. And then correspondingly for more senior roles, 6 months was typically what based on what the market at the time is saying is the duration of time. So that's, sometimes people might ask, well, why was it 3 months and 6 months? That's really what drove those decisions. Okay, next slide, please. So that was kind of the very quick wrap up on the experience with Right Management. Extremely positive, certainly from a client point of view. And I suppose I can now move into my own experience with Right Management. And this is when I said at the beginning, yes to Paul and Nicola, and yes to Paul and Nicola on both sets of slides, because I really can say that my experience has been positive. I've been able to avail of the executive outplacement service. And, I put this bullet point together before I even had seen the other slides that we were going to go through. But a very supportive environment. And I can't really stress this point enough when we talk about the right fit with the program, when we talk about, increasing confidence, when we talk about the sense of, the overwhelming, position you might be in if you find yourself unemployed. So it was a really supportive environment. And where I want to go with this is, so I have been in HR for over 25 years. Okay, so I'm dating myself a little bit. And, I would be the person where everybody would say, hey, could you look at my CV, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, yeah, no problem. Like, I'm in HR. And then I found myself on the other side of the experience. And I like, the world had just changed. Technology had changed. The way you look for a job changed. Understanding how LinkedIn and its algorithms completely new to me. And, Nicola pointed out in one of her slides, ghost opportunities. I mean, these were just things that weren't in my world previous. And what I can definitely say that Right Management provided me with was, first of all, an absolutely wonderful coach. I don't know if the person's on the call or not, but a coach who really at times also, I think, flexed his skill and talent to become a mentor. While for me, a career transition was the right move, I knew that I was a little bit reluctant. My confidence probably wasn't where I would have liked it to have been. And so for me, and this whole idea of the self-enablement, working with the coach that I had, he was able to kind of bring me through some of the technology aspects. So how does LinkedIn work? And without the coach, I really feel I would not have been where I got, bringing me from a place of probably reluctance to confidence and excitement about new opportunities, but helping me understand about brand. I mean, when I had last looked for a job, the conversation about brand was there, but probably not broadly. And then, of course, the CV review and just the general coaching discussions about, well, what is next? Is it time to pivot? And teasing that out, because as Nicola said in her talk, the outplacement time, I think if used well and you have a good partner, can be a really effective and powerful tool for self-reflection for people to really make the next best move. In addition to having my coach, I also had access to the different portals, the digital platforms, and again, responsive, knowledgeable, and professional, and human. I probably should have put human on this, but hopefully that is definitely coming across, and what I'm expressing verbally is human, is how I would absolutely say Right Management has been for me. So can't say enough good. So thank you for that. And then my final slide is really about just my own key learnings, having gone through a number of restructurings. We focused on Takeda, but throughout my career, I've been through a number of them. And for anybody who's out there who might be facing into it, I think there are really three different kind of boxes that I put things in. The first one is critical foundations, so kind of a tier one. And that's really about knowing your landscape. So, the legal and the compliance landscapes, social and cultural norms. So an example of that might be social plans in countries, societal norms, what happens during a restructuring, stakeholder alignment early on and comprehensive. So again, we mentioned of that earlier, that there are a lot of stakeholders, and it can be very challenging to get everybody on board. And HR, again, often at the center of it, but you need to get stakeholder alignment early on and make sure that you're getting all the stakeholders in the room. You won't agree on the first conversation, but hopefully you'll get there. Roles, responsibilities, and governance. Again, lots of moving parts here. But when we take a look at typically who are the key stakeholders we have here, who is doing what, how are decisions being made, and by whom? And if we have to course correct or pivot, how do we make sure it's very clear that's what we're actually doing? And then finally, organization and project management execution. It can be an Excel spreadsheet, but it has to be something, and it has to be good, and it has to be organized. The next tier I would call trusted external partners. So whether that's your outplacement or your pensions or your tax advice, your trade unions, and your government relationships, understand who those people are and how are you working with them. Okay. And then finally, aftermath tier 3, This is possibly more relevant in Europe, but mechanism for grievance and challenge. If there are questions that arise about why people were selected for things like redundancy, compliance follow-up activities. So make sure you've done everything you need to do to tick the boxes, and then the effective wrap-ups that you have in your organization. So that's me, and thank you for your time.
That's great, Lauren, and thanks very much for running through the details of your experiences, both sides. It's actually very rare to be able to invite someone on the call that has those unique experiences, both from the client side, which you ran through in great detail there. So it's really interesting for people on the call to see what that looks like, because a lot of people don't know where to start. They don't know what's involved. They might never have done that process before. So really great for people to see that, and as well to learn from your own personal experiences of outplacement programs, what you feel added value in your situation as well. So thanks very much for sharing. And we're just before we move on to some questions which we received from attendees, I'm just going to run through quickly a couple of reflection points, maybe just to give you some takeaway points or things to reflect on after the call. I'll bring these just all in the interest of time. The couple of ones I pick out on maybe in terms of what Nicola's talked about, what Lauren's talked about, is that people-centric approach and what that involves. So you would have heard us in the call talk a lot about that individualized, personalized supports. And Nicola was talking about that, how technology fits in with the people-first approach, always utilizing the latest technologies in that people-focused environment. I think that's really a lot of what we're touching on today. Those continuous personal touch points throughout that candid experience is really important. Having that dedicated coach that's a good fit. You would have heard Lauren talk about her very experienced coach that she was working with in her executive outplacement program. You heard Nicola talk about those recruiter placement supports as well that we have, financial coaching, program coordinators, all those touch points that take people through that, whatever time length it is, 3 months, 6 months that Lauren talked about. I think there are some of the unique things maybe to take away from today and how you might think about that for any programs you're looking to implement yourselves. And it's good to see those case study examples that both Nicola and Lauren talked about again, so that we can see it in practice. Outplacement is a pretty sensitive type of business area that we work in here in HR. So it's great for everyone to be able to see some real life examples of what that looks like. So just a few key takeaways to think about and reflect on after the event itself. So we have time for a few questions. Like I said at the start, we did have a section for questions in the registration box, and we've got some of your questions in here, which we're happy to run through. So our first question was around, of course, the area of AI. We were always going to get an AI question. So we'll run through these in turn, just in the interest of time, with Lauren and Nicola. So maybe we'll start with you, Nicola. How do you think outplacement has changed over the last 5 years through those advents of technologies like AI? So, you're expecting this one from AI, I would have thought. You're just on mute, Nicola, just so you know.
We'll go, Lara. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the question. And I guess, yes, expecting it. And we also touched on it earlier in the presentation to some extent. Yeah, outplacement's definitely evolved over the last 5 years. And I think in any time period, we'd be able to say the same thing. And that's largely because the market itself changes and evolves. And to ensure that we're offering the right outplacement support, we need to make sure that our support aligns with where the market's at. So we've seen the rise of skills-based work, of AI, and there's more to come, of course, digital job platforms. And so our programs adapt. They have to adapt to support people in the right way so they're receiving the most relevant support in the market. Technology, I think we could safely say, has made outplacement smarter, with better tools for skills assessment, for labour market insights, for example, and AI-enabled job matching. But as I think about this question, and I guess it goes back to some of the things that I mentioned in some of my slides, one thing that hasn't changed is that job loss is still a deeply human experience. And at the end of the day, transitions hinge on conversations. When we think about it, conversations come in, whether it's through the career coaching that you receive, through the networking that you engage in, or through the interviews that you have. So these are moments where people really need people to finesse their approach. So our approach in that sense is always tech-enabled, but it's human-led, and it needs to stay that way. the technology makes the journey faster and smarter, but it's the human connection that really shifts the dial and where we see that greatest level of satisfaction from the programs that we deliver.
Fantastic, Nicola. Thank you very much. The second question received was, maybe Lauren, you can take this one. What is the best way to choose the correct messaging for internal staff impacted by redundancies, so they understand the outplacement programs and understand how they're going to be supported? So maybe you have insights from your experiences there.
Yeah, thank you, Jared, for the question. I'm going to bring this back to the employee experience point, I think, that I made earlier in my own slides. And what I mean by that is, and again, understanding that these are sensitive times, I think we bring it back to the employee experience, and we bring it back to the organization wanting to support people for their next success, and wanting to make sure that the people who have contributed so importantly to the company mission are then supported into their next journey. So I think that's a really important, how you wordsmith that for your organization. But to me, that's a good platform. That's a really good starting point. And then I think the other thing too that's important is that if that's the language that you're using, you role model that change, right, in that message. So for the people who are leaving, they are still as valued as any other employee who is staying until they leave. And even after they leave, they are still valued. And I think it's that to me has been an effective way. Because people have lots of different emotions at the time. They're angry with the company, they're angry with the situation, they're angry with the manager. So I think, in order to diffuse that, we have to kind of go back to, it's an unfortunate situation, but we value you and we want to support you. And the other thing I would definitely suggest is that, once you have your internal messaging correct, I would definitely invite Right Management then in to do a series of the webinars, which we found really helpful. Now, they weren't always webinars. I think they all went to webinars after COVID, but if I remember correctly, in 2019, we had some on-site presence as well, because I think they're getting it from the experts. They're getting the kind of data points that Nicola and Paul, the Nicolas and the Pauls, can share with them about the reality of the support. Because I liked what Nicola said when she said it's not a DIY activity, right? And this is how we can support. The other point I would make, Jared, is just that, sometimes your toughest stakeholders are your very senior stakeholders who they're looking at the bottom line. And if we're going through a restructuring, they're probably really looking at the bottom line and what's the value. And again, I think partnering with the likes of Right Management to get some of those data points in front of your senior stakeholders can be very, very helpful. Again, doing the right thing, exiting with dignity and reputational.
Great. Thanks very much, Lauren. The third question we had, maybe Nicola, if you want to take this one. What is it better to offer individual or group programs, and how the results of these programs judged from the company perspective? If you have some insights into that one.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. So individual programs tend to be most appropriate for executive transitions, and we've heard from yourself, Lauren, today, as well as for entry through to senior level professionals. They allow for personalized coaching, tailored career strategies, which are especially important at those levels. I would say, on the other hand, that group-based support typically works well in a kind of plant or site-based setting, really where you need the scale and the speed, and also to let people know of the accessibility of support. So group workshops, for example, delivered on site, can provide immediate guidance. They can foster that sense of community and help people to sort of remind people that they're not going through this alone, because sometimes transition can feel lonely. To the second part of the question about results, I would say that companies typically look at a mix of factors. Of course, how quickly people land new opportunities, how satisfied participants are with their support, and also the kind of impact that then has on your employer brand. And possibly in many cases, the success isn't just about the re-employment outcomes, but about ensuring that you're confident that people felt supported, respected, and that they're ready for what comes next. Now, some of those are more or less tangible to kind of quantify, but we can still capture the sentiment nevertheless and report back on that.
Great. Thanks very much, Nicola. And the final question we got in, and maybe Lauren, if you want to take this one to wrap us up, what is the value for a company in spending money in outplacement? So straight to the point, why would companies spend money in outplacement supporting staff they're leaving? That might be what they've been thinking in terms of outplacement as an area.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Nicola, for the question. So I think I'm going to go back to, again, a previous point I would have made about, doing the right thing and doing the right thing, again, well, these folks are leaving. Yeah, but there's also the reputational collateral that you have in your organization, right? And so, we see more and more with technology. We have Glassdoor, we have LinkedIn, we have a number of different, areas where former employees can comment, because this is going to be probably the final experience they have, unless it is somebody, and this is also related, where we have a boomerang effect, who wants to come back, who, their abiding memory of the company is they cared, they looked after me, I was important, they wanted to support me. So, I think that there's an aspect of doing the right thing as an organization. I think it's also tied into the reputational piece of it. Also, oftentimes, if you're the person who's looking at all of this, you might be doing benchmarking. And I can certainly say that when we benchmark what organizations do, outplacement, it depends on how deep you want to get into the outplacement, is probably something that's really becoming more of a norm as part of a social plan. So we see really increasingly that, employers, large and small, who really want to protect their brand and their reputation, the outplacement, it may be light touch and it might be a deeper dive depending on a budget, but this is really something employees are really coming to expect from, really a reputable employer. And, I think the final piece is the signaling this also has to the remaining employees. Well, how are the people who left really treated? Is this an organization I want to work for? Is this a great place to work? It's that idea of looking after the person at the center of the situation, who, again, has contributed to the success of the larger organization. So for me, that's the value of spending the money. So hopefully that answers the question. Thank you.
Great answer, Lauren. Thanks very much for providing the insights there. So we're coming to the end of today's webinar. So just to say, hopefully everyone found it interesting. Hopefully you got some insights from both Nicola and Lauren in terms of what outplacement practice looks like. Hopefully you enjoy the case studies and seeing some unique insights maybe that Lauren could have provided from her experience, and Nicola from working with our enterprise clients and her experience. So hopefully you found it interesting today. It is available to watch on demand again. So if you want to revisit it and watch some of it real time, it's the same link that you registered on. Go back in and you can watch it again. We're also happy to send some PDF versions of the slide deck. We get asked regularly to provide a deck for people that want to utilize the information in their own roles. Happy to do that. The PowerPoint slides are huge, so we'll send them to you in a PDF format there instead, and makes it easier not to clog up your inbox. Anything we talked about today, we're always available for a chat for any areas of support we can lend, whether it's myself, Nicola, or even Lauren. If someone wanted to connect, we're happy just to help you out in any way we can with guidance or support, whatever you need. Just touch base with us. We're very happy to help. So finally, just like to thank Nicola and Lauren for your time today. I really appreciate you joining us here today for the webinar. Some great insights from you both, and delighted to have you on the call. And thanks to everyone for registering and attending as well, whether you can watch us in real time today or looking at us back on demand. Really appreciate you coming in, viewing the content and listening to some of our insights from Right Match It. So thanks very much, everyone, and have a great day.